section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist.
So I'm a little late on this. Some people might say this, but I wasn't going to make a video because I didn't want to get into the mud of it all, I guess. My point to this video isn't to talk about the content of the book. It's more to talk about what happened around the book. For some of you that do not know, I was one of Ta-nehisi Coates' former students at NYU in a writing reporting class. And I will put the picture right here because I know someone's going to be like, I don't believe you. It's true, I was. And this class was life-changing for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot from Coates. So before I get into that, let's just watch the clip. I'm sure you've seen it 100 times, but we're going to watch it again.
What policies we believe should be in the world, which policies we don't, are actually shaped largely by writing and the stories we tell. And so I believe that writers, and particularly young writers, have so much to do in the politics and in this time when, obviously we have so much conflict and there's so many quote-unquote issues to be dealt with.
Ta-nehisi, I want to dive into the Israel-Palestine section of the book. It's the largest section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And so then I found myself wondering, why does Ta-nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time, very talented, smart guy, leave out so much? Why leave out that Israel is surrounded by countries that want to eliminate it? Why leave out that Israel deals with terror groups that want to eliminate it? Why not detail anything of the first and the second intifada, the cafe bombings, the bus bombings, the little kids blown to bits? And is it because you just don't believe that Israel, in any condition, has a right to exist?
Well, I would say the perspective that you just outlined, there is no shortage of that perspective in American media. That's the first thing I would say. I am most concerned always with those who don't have a voice, with those who don't have the ability to talk. I have asked repeatedly in my interviews whether there is a single network, mainstream organization in America with a Palestinian American bureau chief or correspondent who actually has a voice to articulate their part of the world. I've been a reporter for 20 years. The reporters of those who believe more sympathetically about Israel and its right to exist don't have a problem getting their voice out. But what I saw in Palestine, what I saw on the West Bank, what I saw in Haifa in Israel, what I saw in the South Hebron Hills, those were the stories that I have not heard. And those were the stories that I was most occupied with. I wrote a 260-page book. It is not a treatise on the entirety of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
But if you were to read this book, you would be left wondering, why does any of Israel exist? What a horrific place, committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is central and key. If Israel has a right to exist, and if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
But you write a book that delegitimizes the pillars of Israel. It seems like an effort to topple the whole building of it. So I come back to the question, and it's what I struggled with throughout this book. What is it that so particularly offends you about the existence of a Jewish state that is a Jewish safe place and not any of the other states out there?
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people laid down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity. The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case, of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion.
But
I'm with another pastor. No. I want to. This is very important.
It is important. It is
extremely important.
Yeah, let me lay it down.
I'm working with the person that is guiding me is a Palestinian whose father, whose grandfather and grandmother was born in this town. And I have more freedom to walk than he does. He can't ride on certain roads. He can't get water in the same way that Israeli citizens who live less than a mile away from him can.
And why is that okay? Why is that? Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well. What is their role in the lack of a Palestinian
I have a
state?
very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am, for instance, against the death penalty. What the person did to get the death penalty, it really doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they were selling a nickel bag of marijuana or if they were a serial killer. I am against the death penalty. I am against a state that discriminates against people on the basis of ethnicity. I'm against that. There is nothing the Palestinians could do that would make that okay for me. My book is not based on the hyper-morality
What's the last
of the
message
Palestinian
you want
people.
in lessons? Because many people feel it's complicated. You say it's not complicated. Less than 20 seconds. What's your message?
Less than 20 seconds. I want people to read the book.
Well,
And I don't make the assumption that somebody would just read the book and have read nothing else about Israel
Okay.
and Palestine.
You're still invited to High Holidays. I'll see you at the show.
So as you guys saw in that clip, things got tense with the CBS reporter and with Ta-nehisi Coates. When I saw this video, I honestly was like, okay, yeah, it's tense. There's some points of contention there, obviously, disagreement, but I did not think that the CBS reporter was out of line, so to speak. I also thought Coates did a great job defending his point, and I thought it was going to be fine, and I didn't think of anything to go on Twitter or think that anyone was going to get backlash. But to my amazement, people were calling for the CBS reporter to be fired. They are also saying that he went too hard on Coates, and they also were saying he was unprofessional. I was shocked because I thought this is how journalism works. I went to NYU to get my master's in journalism, and specifically in Coates's class, he would always tell us to be prepared to defend your point. Now, maybe he wasn't saying like in a debate, but in your writing, if someone critiques you or if you have something that you really believe in, you better be prepared to defend it to its end and have enough backup to know what you're talking about. And I feel like what I saw in that interview is exactly what Coates displayed in our class. He did exactly what he said to do all the time. But this is what journalism is. It's when two sides are represented. It's not a one-sided thing. Notice when you see an article and it might seem like it might be biased, right? Or it might seem like the other side isn't present. Underneath in the disclaimer, it usually will say, we reached out to so-and-so, but they didn't return our call, so blah, blah, blah. Like we couldn't put them in this interview. So you just had two grown men, two men who are journalists, seasoned journalists, discussing this really tense, obviously, topic. And we got to see it in real time. They made their points, they said their piece, and they moved on and laughed at the end of the interview. And that should have been where it ended. But the fact that people were flabbergasted really made me wonder what's happening. I mean, I know what's happening in journalism. People think it's dead. But when people think asking tough questions is wrong, that's where things are off the rails. But I want to show you this clip that Coates did a couple years ago where he talked about the importance of freedom of speech, and he talks about the importance of reading things that you disagree with, and that you need to do that, especially as a journalist and a writer. And this was over the framing of the fact that his book was being banned, and he was talking about his qualm with it is beyond his book, but that books in general, books that he would disagree with or agree with, should not be banned. And I think this is pretty sound and speaks to the situation that we're discussing right now.
History, anybody that's ever, studied history in any sort of serious way knows that you feel a range of emotions. And 70% of the time, those emotions are not positive, emotions that make you feel good about the world. The goal of education isn't, to tell you that, the world is sunshine and rainbows. The goal is enlightenment. The goal is some deeper understanding of humanity, and that's what you hopefully are trying to get across to students. We have actual laws, not beliefs, not ideas, but actual on the books laws saying that students, in the most recent case, in an AP class of all places, are somehow too sensitive to be exposed to ideas that give them a sad. It is, utterly ridiculous. And it's so clearly not education. The point of it is not education. I'm a teacher too. I teach down at Howard University. I expose my kids to all sorts of things from all sorts of perspectives that I do not hold myself. There is no way in the world I could be a Black writer and say, I will never read anybody that's racist. I'll never read anybody that's sexist. You couldn't live. You couldn't practice your craft if you were like that,
I mean, the irony is, like, you and I there are people, and I'm not going to name them, who, like, you and I have talked about, like, writers we like or don't like, writers whose politics we don't like, but you're like, yo, that guy can write.
But the craft.
That's a good argument.
And you have to do that. Like, you have to, and even if you completely disagree with a person, how will you know what you disagree with if you don't read them? If you don't read them seriously, how will you know?
The thing.
So yeah, exactly what he said in that video when he was discussing, you will not know what you don't disagree with or agree with unless you read it. And that's what he taught us. He taught us that you have to read everything, even things that you disagree with, even people you despise or people that would despise you. You need to understand why they think that way. And two, he would also say, you might not like what their argument is, but the way they might write a polemic, the way they might write an intro or a lead, the way they might end their piece with a question, like that style, that format, that structure, you could use for you. Like that's something you can take just as practical advice. He says, so some people, you miss out on things that you can take away because you hate what they say, but you can still learn from people you disagree with. You can still learn from people that don't hold the same views as you. And as journalists, I hope we get back to that. And as people, I hope we get back to that. I want to share this one other story about Coates and about disagreement. I will never forget one of the last classes at NYU, we had what you call a James Baldwin day, where we only read James Baldwin essays and pieces, and we discussed it for an hour or two. I believe it was an hour and a half was the class. And we were reading James Baldwin's letter to my nephew. And I remember I disagree with Coates on a thing that James Baldwin was talking about. And I had no hesitation really to raise my hand when and tell him, I disagree with this point. Can I explain it to you? One could say that someone would be nervous and be like, how dare you do that with Coates? But I think at that point, I had learned enough about him and his rapport with us and what he was teaching to where he invited people to do that. He would invite people to disagree with him all the time. And I can tell you and attest to the fact that he never had us feel like he was Ta-Nehisi Coates and we were his peers. It felt like we were all writers in the room. So I remember I disagreed with him on something and he was like, oh, tell me more. That's interesting. How did you come to that conclusion, right? And he was really interested in my take and took it in and said he was going to think about it. I love that. That made me respect him even more because yeah, I was kind of nervous when I did it, but I knew he wasn't going to be mad, right? And that type of teaching has only helped me to be more vocal about my opinions and also how to communicate those opinions and to do it respectfully. So I think what I hope people get from this video is we can disagree well with each other. we can also have hard conversations with each other, like we saw with Coates and the CBS journalist. That should be happening all the time. Two sides should always be coming together that disagree and talk and not hold anything back and really put things on the table. People love to say, let's have candid conversation. There is no candid conversations happening, because when they happen, this happens. People are getting canceled. People are getting finger wagged. People are having their jobs taken away. This makes absolutely no sense. We will not get anywhere in this country if people are afraid to voice what they think. That's the problem that we're having, is that it's either you can think this way or this way. It's this team thinks this team thinks that. And if you are a little gray, you're out. And people are over here sacrificing and conforming themselves into something they really don't believe. But because it's closer to kind of what they believe, they just go along with the program. And that's why you don't really get to know anyone really anymore, because people are afraid to be themselves. So hopefully what we learn from this, and what I'm going to keep carrying on, is all because you disagree doesn't mean that has to be your enemy. All because you disagree doesn't mean this person is someone that you can't get along with. And I invite people to have more disagreements well with people than staying in your echo chambers and your silo groups. So that's all this video is really about. No drama. Just wanted to say this. With that said, as always, peace, love, less shade, and I'll see you next time.